those paedophile drug rapes went on. Because 60 of our children, 60, well, one is too many, but 60 is a massive rape wave. It's astounding. If it was happening in another country, it would be in our national newspapers. And it did get covered in one or two papers, and it got one TV programme, and that was all. But now it's all been forgotten. And even if people saw that programme or read those papers, they think, oh well, that happened in Keighley. Happened. It's in the past, isn't it? It's not happening now, is it? Yes, it is happening now, exactly. There's a lady who came to me at the start, but she's got a 13-year-old daughter, and they're grooming her right now when she can't keep her in, with drink and cigarettes and drugs. So it's still going on. The bastards who are in that gang, they're in prison. So the public think it's all over. Well, it's not, because there's more of them. Why is that? So there's two reasons. The first is that our police force, our elected governors, haven't done a damn thing properly about it. And the second is that their good book tells them that that's acceptable. Now that sentence could give me 7 years in prison, and if I actually went into detail about what's in the Quran, we'd be here all night, so I'm not going to. But if you doubt it, go and buy a copy, or look it up on the internet, and you will find verse after verse after verse, which says that you can take any women you want, as long as they're not Muslim women, any woman that your right arm can own. That's the sword arm. It's the fighting arm. It's the arm you hit a lot right out with a baseball bat with you. That's the sword, the fighting arm. Any woman that they can take by force or guile is theirs. Lawful and proper, religiously acceptable, spoils to them. In fact, they're actually encouraged to do it, because if they get a girl, it's not just because they're white, it's because they're not Muslim. If they get a non-Muslim girl and they get her pregnant, then her community doesn't want her, and the child generally grows up a Muslim. And that's the way that this wicked, vicious faith has expanded from a handful of cranky lunatics about 1,300 years ago, till it's now sweeping country after country before it all over the world. And if you read that book, you'll find that's what they want. They divide the world into two. They divide it into Dar el-Salam, which is the land of peace, the land of submission, the land where everyone has already submitted to Islam, and Dar el-Harb, the land of war, which is all the areas which aren't yet Islamic, and they've all got a duty to Islamify them. Now, those 18, 19, 20, 25-year-old Asians, Muslims, who are seducing and raping white girls in this town right now, they're not particularly good Muslims. They drink and all the rest of it, but still part of what they're doing comes from what they're taught is acceptable. And it's from the fact that they know they're community leaders. If they're actually pressed to it, they'll condemn it for the sake of the press. But they don't condemn it to them. Do you honestly think that if their community leaders really didn't want that happening, they couldn't stop it? Do you honestly think that the transport first ringleaders wouldn't be found dead in a nearby river, or be shipped back to Pakistan if their community leaders didn't accept it, didn't want it? Of course not. They're letting it go ahead because it's part of what they've always done. It's part of their plan for conquering countries. It's how they do it. That's the big picture. And Keighley should be known all over Britain for the fact that it's the place where this particular part of their plan, not the riots or the rest of it, this one has come out here more than anybody else. And it's not known. They're completely silent about it. Well, not anymore. That's going on up in Worth Valley. I've been talking to people here during the break. We're going to be standing a candidate in Worth Valley in June. We're going to be fighting it heavily on that issue, and we're going to blow it wide open. And hopefully we can get someone elected on that issue alone. And that at least will be a start. And then around the country, they'll turn and say, well, why the BNP got elected in that place? And it's come out in a few places at least. The BNP has got elected in that place because gangs of young Muslim thugs and perverts are drugging and raping 13-year-old girls. And if we can get that out into the media in the country, at least it's going to start waking a few more people up. It's not enough just having the people in this room awake. It's not even enough having the people of Keighley awake. We've got to have millions of our people awake before we can really turn this country around. And Keighley can play an important part in that process. We've got to do it because it won't stop. Like I said, the original drug gang paedophile rapists are in prison, but it's still going on. And if the ones doing it now are put in prison, you look at the schools which 20 years ago had just a few 95% white. You look at the primary schools now, and you think, well, that represents the population of young males which are going to be walking around Keighley in 10, 15 years' time. You look at the primary schools if you want to see what Keighley is going to look like in 15 years' time, and you see we really haven't got very long. And it's not just gang, paedophile, rape, is it? There's the violence as well. Is it possible to go through certain parts of Keighley on a Friday night? Is it one of you?
Any night.
Of course it's not. Any night. Exactly. How many nights go by before another white lad gets battered with baseball bats or iron bars? How often does it happen? Is it once a year? Once a month? Once a week? Yeah. Once upon a time it didn't happen. Then it was once or twice a year. Then it was once or twice a month. And now, as you say, as you know, it's regular. It's regular as clockwork. And they're only the ones that you hear about. Let alone the ones you just think, if I talk about it, it's going to be trouble. They'll pick on me even more. It'll get worse. And it will get worse and worse. Because, as I say, partly the police force won't interfere. They're all clown-nosing their way to the top by being politically incorrect. The Labour government won't interfere. The Labour Council won't interfere. The Muslim imams won't interfere. And the white British just turn away because they don't want to get involved, do they? Because they're scared. They're worried. Well, they should be scared. Because what's happening in the worst parts of Keighley now will be happening in the whole of the town in 5 or 6 years' time, and what's happening in Keighley as a whole now is going to be happening in all the rest of Yorkshire in 10 years' time, and what happens in Yorkshire in 10 years' time is going to be happening in Northumberland in 15, 20 years' time, and in Cornwall, as the last whites basically try and find their way to the sea. It's not melodramatic. If you think it is, the older ones amongst you or the younger ones talk to your parents or grandparents about how white this town was just 30 years ago. And think how fast it's changed. We haven't got very long. Now, one response you get from people, the people out there, will say, well, they should do something. They, the government, the police or whatever, they should do something. That's the problem, I tell you. They have done something. They, the people who run this country, the people who control the press, the television, the Houses of Parliament, they have done something. They turned a white, homogeneous Britain, when everybody was English, Scottish, Irish or Welsh, and we all basically got on, and we were the same, and we understood each other, and we had the same background. They turned that quite stable society into a multiracial hellhole. It hasn't happened by accident. That's what they have done. People like Blair. They will not do anything to help you, your family, your neighbours, your street, your town, your county, your country. Stop what's going on. Because they want it to happen. That's what you've absolutely got to make sure people you talk to understand. It's not happening by accident. They're not letting in floods of asylum seekers because they have no choice. International law is quite simple. We've got a duty to take every single asylum seeker for whom this is the first safe country they can possibly get to. So that's someone from Ireland, or someone from France, or someone from Iceland. But they've got a duty to stop in the first safe country they can get to. So if you're from Iraq, or Kurdistan, or Afghanistan, or Pakistan, or Somalia, you cross 10 or 15 countries to get here, because this is Stop Touch Britain. So our government needn't let a single one of them in. And they lose votes because they do. But they're willing to lose some votes because they want to multiculturalise us out of existence. Because they think a multicultural Britain is better than that boring old white Britain you used to have where your kids could go out and play in the park and not be picked up and murdered by paedophiles or gang raped by Muslim thugs. They actually think the country we've got now is better and they want to see it more like that. So yeah, they are doing something. They are trying to destroy us, the people of this country, as fast as ever they can. And they're doing it. So they aren't going to come to the rescue. There is no one going to come to the rescue of Keighley. There's not even the British National Party is going to come into Keighley to help, because we're all trying to win in other places. Adrian here, he can't come and help Keighley. He's helping people over in Halifax, and he's helping to get more people elected there. There isn't anybody except you. There's no knight on a shining, big horse with shining armour going to come to the rescue, kill the Islamic dragon. There isn't anybody. We can't stand candidates even, unless local people are prepared to stand. Candidates can't win unless local people are prepared to go out and help. Not just come to a meeting in a pub and have a few beers and clap a bit. It isn't enough. You've actually got to do something. Because if you don't do something, we're going to lose